My daughter will need that room by January 2nd, my sister said as she reached for the gravy, as casually as if she were asking me to pass the salt. For a few moments, the only sounds filling my dining room were the gentle crackling of the fireplace and the quiet clink of my mother's fork against her plate. I stared at my sister Karina, certain I must have heard her wrong. "What room?" I asked. Karina gave me an impatient look. She was wearing the cream sweater I had given her the previous Christmas. The one she had complained wasn't quite the right shade of ivory. Beside her, my 9-year-old niece, Lily, quietly pushed peas away from her mashed potatoes with the edge of her fork. "Your spare bedroom," Karina said, "the one upstairs with the window seat." "Lily loves that room. She needs a stable place to stay while I figure everything out." My grip tightened around my wine glass. The room she was talking about hadn't been a spare bedroom for very long. For almost 2 years, it had been a forgotten space with warped floors, cracked plaster, and an old radiator that groaned every time it turned on. 3 months earlier, after putting it off for years, I had finally renovated it. I spent nearly $19,000. New hardwood floors, custom-built shelves, a cozy reading nook beneath the bay window, soft sage-green walls, linen curtains, a comfortable mattress, warm lighting. And a small desk where I sometimes reviewed patient files instead of working in my office downstairs. It had become my peaceful escape. After long 12-hour shifts at the veterinary clinic, after emergency surgeries, frightened animals, and owners crying on my shoulder, that room was the quietest place in my life. Karina knew all of that. She had watched me pick out paint samples. She had even sent me links to lamps she thought would look perfect on the bedside table. At one point, she joked that the room looked nicer than most hotel rooms she could afford. Now she was talking as if it already belonged to her daughter. I glanced at Lily. She had stopped moving the peas around her plate. Her shoulders were stiff and her eyes stayed fixed on the table. None of this was her fault. "What exactly are you talking about?" I asked, keeping my voice calm. Karina let out an exaggerated sigh. "My lease is ending." "I already told you. You told me your landlord was raising the rent," I replied. "That isn't the same as telling me you're moving into my house." Dad placed his fork down with a sharp scrape. "Angelica," he said in the same slow, disappointed tone he had used since I was a child, "your sister is going through a difficult time." Karina leaned back in her chair and folded her arms. "I'm not asking for much." "You haven't asked," I said. "You announced that my bedroom belongs to your daughter." Mom gave me a pleading look. "Let's not ruin Christmas," I almost laughed. The dining room smelled of roasted turkey, cinnamon candles, and the expensive pine garland Mom had insisted I buy because she thought my old decorations looked a little sad. I'd worked until nearly midnight the night before after performing emergency surgery on a Labrador that had swallowed part of a plastic toy. Then I'd gotten up at 6 that morning to cook for everyone. Karina showed up 40 minutes late with Lily and an empty container because she wanted leftovers. Dad brought a bottle of wine even though he knew I didn't drink. Mom criticized my tablecloth before she had even taken off her coat, yet somehow I was the one making Christmas unpleasant. "How long are you planning to stay?" I asked. Karina shrugged. "I don't know, a few months, maybe longer. The housing market is a mess, and where am I supposed to sleep?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she looked at Dad. He cleared his throat. "Well," he said, "Lily obviously needs the renovated bedroom. She deserves stability. Karina can use your room for now." I stared at him. "My bedroom? You have a perfectly good pull-out couch downstairs," Dad replied. "Don't you?" For one strange, frozen moment, every sound in the room became painfully clear. The clock ticking on the wall, the wind brushing against the windows, the quiet hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen, Lily's small intake of breath. I looked around the table at the 3 adults waiting for me to agree that the obvious solution to my sister's financial problems was for me to slowly give up my own house, room by room, until I was sleeping on a pull-out couch in my own living room. Dad's expression never changed. It stayed calm, firm, and completely certain that I would give in. Mom looked anxious but hopeful. Karina looked almost bored. They truly believed I would say yes. That was the worst part, not the entitlement, not even the assumption, the certainty. They had spent years training me to be reasonable, generous, and accommodating. They knew I would complain quietly, lose sleep in private, and eventually do whatever made everyone else's life easier. They did not realize that something inside me had finally gone quiet. I lifted my wine glass, took a small sip, and nodded. "All right," I said. Karina's shoulders relaxed immediately. Thank you, Mom whispered. Dad picked up his fork again as if everything had been settled exactly as it should be. Karina smiled and turned to Lily. See, I told you Aunt Angelica would understand. Lily didn't smile back. I finished dinner, served dessert, packed the leftovers, loaded the dishwasher, and kissed my parents goodbye at the door. Karina lingered behind them, scrolling through her phone while Lily zipped up her coat. I'll bring some boxes over next weekend, she said. You should move your medical paperwork out of the desk. Lily will need the space for homework. I leaned against the doorframe. What about your furniture? I'll sell most of it. There's no point paying for storage. And your boyfriend, her eyes flickered. What about him? Is Marcus moving in too? Karina rolled her eyes. Not right away. Maybe later, depending on how things go. We haven't really talked about it yet. Of course they hadn't. Karina was 34 years old. She had always treated planning as something other people handled for her. She drifted from one crisis to another, and somehow each one ended up on my doorstep, wrapped in the language of family obligation. When she lost her job at a boutique fitness studio 3 years earlier, I covered her rent for 4 months. When she needed a deposit for a new apartment after separating from Lily's father, I transferred $3,200 without hesitation. When Lily's school organized a week-long science camp Karina couldn't afford, I paid for it because Lily deserved the opportunity. When Karina's car needed repairs, when her electricity bill was overdue, or when she wanted to take an online marketing course she never even finished, she called me. Sometimes she asked sweetly. Sometimes she cried. Sometimes Mom called first to prepare me. The money always left my account. It almost never came back. I loved my niece. That was the lever they used most often. You don't want Lily to suffer because of adult problems, do you? No, I didn't. But somewhere along the way, protecting Lily from hardship became the same as protecting Karina from the consequences of her own choices. That night after everyone left, I walked upstairs and stood in the doorway of the renovated bedroom. Moonlight spilled across the oak floor. The linen curtains swayed gently above the radiator. A book I'd been reading lay open on the window seat beside a neatly folded blanket. I remembered the week the contractors finished the renovation. I had come home after losing an elderly golden retriever during surgery. I knew the dog probably wouldn't survive when the owner brought him in, but I had tried anyway. Afterward, I sat alone in that room with my shoes still on and cried until the sky turned dark. It wasn't just a spare bedroom. It was the first thing I had ever created entirely for myself. No practical reason, no family emergency, no guilt attached. I sat on the window seat, opened my laptop and stared at the screen. Then I called Naomi. She answered on the 4th ring, her voice thick with sleep. Is everything okay? Do you have an emergency? Naomi had been my friend since university. She was also the real estate agent who helped me buy the house 6 years earlier. I want to sell, I said. There was a pause. Sell what? My house. Another pause. Your house? Yes, at 11:45 on Christmas night. Yes, Naomi woke up quickly after that. Are you serious? Completely. What happened? My family decided to move into it. She let out a long breath. Without asking you, they asked after they had already decided. Did you say no? I shook my head. Naomi, I'm done arguing with people who think my answer is negotiable. She was silent for a moment, then her voice turned businesslike. All right, the neighborhood is in high demand. Your renovations will help. You have good equity. Are you thinking of a standard listing timeline? No. What are you thinking? Cash buyers only, as is sale, fast closing. 14 days, that will reduce your pool of buyers. I know, you might leave money on the table. I know, do you have somewhere to stay? I can rent a furnished townhouse near the clinic for a few months. Dr. Levin has been trying to convince me to buy into the practice and move closer anyway. Naomi already knew about the offer. My boss, Dr. Levin, planned to retire gradually over the next 2 years. He had offered me a partnership stake in the veterinary clinic, along with access to a small cottage owned by the practice while I decided where I wanted to live. I had been putting off my decision because buying into the clinic felt like such a huge step. Selling my house felt like an even bigger decision. But sitting in that beautiful room while my sister planned where to put her daughter's school books and my father casually assigned me to the couch, the choice suddenly became simple. The house was mine, that meant I could sell it. Naomi came over at midnight, wearing leggings, a wool coat over her pajamas, and the expression of someone who had heard enough stories about my family to know that asking too many questions would only slow things down. We made coffee at my kitchen island and put together the listing. I already had professional photos from the renovation. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, updated kitchen, finished basement, fenced backyard, quiet street, move-in ready, cash offers preferred, closing within 14 days. By 2:30 a.m. the listing was live. At 6:45 Naomi texted me, "I already have 3 showing requests, 1 cash investor, 1 couple relocating for work, and 1 buyer represented by an agent I trust." "I'm putting the sign up now." I stood at the upstairs window in my robe and watched her hammer the post into my front yard. The sign looked strangely cheerful against the snow. For sale. The phone rang at 7:12. "Mom," I let it ring twice before answering. "Good morning. What is on your lawn?" she demanded. Her voice was so loud I had to pull the phone away from my ear. "I assume you mean the sign. Why is there a for sale sign in front of your house?" "Because the house is for sale." There was a long, stunned silence. Mom drove past my street every weekday on her way to work at the dental office. I pictured her slowing down in her little silver car, coffee in the cup holder, staring at the sign as if someone had placed a tombstone in my front yard overnight. "You're selling your house?" she finally asked. "Yes, since when?" "Since last night." "Does your father know?" "I haven't spoken to him this morning." "What about Karina? What about her?" Mom let out a frustrated sound. "Angelica. This isn't funny, I agree. You can't sell your house because of one conversation at Christmas dinner. I can sell my house for any reason I choose. Your sister already gave notice to her landlord." That made me sit up straighter. "When?" Mom hesitated. "When what?" "When did she give notice?" Another pause. "Last week." I stared at the kitchen wall. So Karina had ended her lease before even speaking to me. She assumed you would help. She assumed correctly. I'm helping her understand the danger of making plans with property that doesn't belong to her. Mom's voice became sharper. "That's cruel." "No, cruel would be promising Lily a bedroom in someone else's house and making me the villain when reality gets in the way. She needs stability, then Karina should provide it." "You have 3 bedrooms, I also have 1 house." Apparently that was causing confusion. So I decided to simplify the situation. Mom hung up at 7:28. Dad called. I let it go to voicemail. At 7:31 Karina called. I ignored that one too. At 7:40 someone pounded on my front door hard enough to shake the glass. When I opened it, Karina was standing on the porch in sweatpants, an unbuttoned coat, and the same boots she'd worn the night before. Her hair was tied in a messy knot and her face was pale with anger. "What the hell is wrong with you?" she shouted. A curtain moved in the house across the street. I stepped outside and quietly closed the door behind me. "Lower your voice. You listed the house?" "Yes." "You can't do that." "I already did. We had a plan." "You had a plan." "You said all right." "I said all right because I was tired of explaining basic ownership to 3 grown adults during Christmas dinner." She stared at me. "You're selling your entire house just to spite me." "No, I'm selling my house because I realized owning it made you think you were entitled to live in it. Where is Lily supposed to go? With you? My apartment lease ends next week. Then renew it. I can't afford the increase. Find a smaller apartment." Her mouth fell open. "A smaller apartment? Do you even hear yourself? Lily needs her own room." "I agree, and you have one for the next 14 days. The front door opened behind me. Lily stood there in her coat, looking nervous. Karina turned around. "I told you to wait in the car." "I need to use the bathroom," Lily said softly. I stepped aside immediately. "Of course. Go ahead, sweetheart." When the door closed again, I looked at my sister. "Don't bring her into this." Karina's eyes flashed. "She's already in this." "No. You gave up your lease before getting permission to move into my house. That was your decision. You'd really choose money over your niece." There it was. The same familiar weapon she'd used for years. I folded my arms against the cold. "I've paid your rent. I paid your security deposit. I covered Lily's camp fees, school supplies, dental work, and birthday parties. I've transferred you money so many times that my banking app suggests your name the moment I open it. Don't stand on my porch and pretend I've failed your daughter just because I refused to sleep on a couch in the house I paid for." Her expression changed, only for a second, not guilt, calculation. "You always make everything about money, because you're always asking me for money. Family is supposed to help each other. Tell me the last time you helped me." She opened her mouth. Nothing came out. I waited. Snowflakes settled in her hair. "You don't need help," she finally said. "You have your career, you have savings, you have this perfect life." I almost laughed. "My life didn't appear by magic, Karina. I built it while cleaning animal cages during university. I studied while working overnight shifts. I paid off my student loans while you changed jobs every 6 months because every manager was supposedly jealous of you. I earned every peaceful corner of this house. You think you're better than me? No, I think I'm responsible for myself. A minute later, Lily came back outside. Her cheeks were pink from the cold and she avoided looking at either of us. I crouched down and zipped up her coat. Are you okay? I asked. She nodded, but her eyes were glossy. Mom said I was getting your pretty room. I swallowed. I know. Did I do something wrong? That question hurt more than anything Karina had said. No, I told her gently. Absolutely not. You did nothing wrong. The adults made a mistake. It's not your job to fix it. Behind her, Karina looked away. By noon, Naomi had scheduled 6 showings. By evening, we had 2 cash offers. The strongest came from a retired teacher named Mr. Bennett. He was moving closer to his daughter after his wife passed away. He loved the downstairs bedroom because his knees weren't in great shape, the fenced backyard because he wanted to adopt a dog, and the reading nook because his granddaughter visited on weekends. His offer was clean, no financing contingency, no repair requests, closing in 14 days. I accepted it. The next morning, Dad showed up at my clinic. I was in a treatment room examining an orange tabby named Pumpkin, who had picked a fight with a Christmas ribbon and lost. My technician, Rosa, leaned into the doorway. Angelica, she said quietly, there's a man at the front desk asking for you. He says he's your father. I closed my eyes for a moment. Tell him I'm with a patient. He says he'll wait. Dad waited 45 minutes. When I finally walked into the lobby, he was standing beside the display of pet dental care brochures in his long wool coat, clearly annoyed that the world hadn't stopped for him. We need to talk, he said. I have 10 minutes before my next appointment. This isn't something we can discuss in 10 minutes, then it will have to wait. He followed me into the small consultation room and closed the door. What you're doing is irrational, he said. I accepted an offer this morning. His expression changed instantly. You what? The buyer is closing in 13 days. You need to cancel it. No, Angelica, stop acting like a child. I leaned against the counter. I'm not the one giving away someone else's bedroom. His jaw tightened. Your sister is struggling. She has been struggling for a decade. She's a single mother. She's been receiving child support for 9 years. She works. She has options. What she doesn't have is the right to take my house. Nobody is taking your house. You told me to sleep on the couch, only temporarily. So Karina could have your bedroom and Lily could use the room you renovated for a few months. And Marcus, Dad frowned. What about Marcus? Karina said he might move in later. For the first time, Dad looked genuinely surprised. She never mentioned that. Of course she didn't. He glanced toward the door before looking back at me. You're blowing this out of proportion. No, Dad. I'm ending the pattern. What pattern? The one where Karina makes a reckless decision, Mom panics, you call me selfish, and I end up paying to fix everything. His expression hardened. We're your family, I know. You make good money, I know. You live alone in a 3-bedroom house, I know. Then explain why helping your sister feels like such an unbearable sacrifice. I looked at him. Because it's never a sacrifice for the person asking. He opened his mouth, but I kept going. I paid $4,800 toward Mom's dental work when insurance wouldn't cover it. I paid for your transmission repair. I gave Karina $3,200 for her security deposit. I covered 4 months of her rent after she lost her job. I paid Lily's summer camp fees twice. I paid for Karina's marketing course. I even loaned you money for the property taxes 3 years ago and never asked for it back. Dad shifted uncomfortably. I've helped this family for years. Most of the time, I was happy to do it, but the moment I finally spend money on something for myself, Karina decides it belongs to her daughter. And you agreed so completely that you assigned me to the couch without even asking me. His face turned red. Your niece is just a child. Exactly. Which is why she deserves a mother who plans responsibly and grandparents who stop teaching her that stability comes from taking someone else's home. Dad left without saying goodbye. That weekend, everything escalated. Karina posted a vague message on social media about how some people valued property more than family and how difficult it was to explain adult cruelty to an innocent child. Several relatives called me. Aunt Marina said I was being dramatic. My cousin Alina suggested I delay the sale until Karina found another place. Mom even sent me listings for 2-bedroom apartments as though I were Karina's personal housing assistant. Then on Sunday morning, while I was packing dishes into boxes, I heard a van backing into my driveway. I looked through the window. Karina had arrived with a rented moving van. Marcus was with her. So were Mom and Dad. For a moment, I simply stood there holding a stack of newspaper-wrapped plates, unable to believe what I was seeing. Marcus opened the back of the van. Inside were moving boxes, a mattress, Lily's pink desk chair, and 2 large suitcases. I walked outside without even putting on my coat. "What are you doing?" Karina slammed the passenger door. "Moving my things in before you do something even more irresponsible. The house is already under contract. Then cancel it." "No." Marcus rubbed his hands together against the cold. "Look, Angelica, everyone's emotional. Maybe we can talk inside. You're not coming into my house." His eyebrows lifted. "Seriously," Dad stepped forward. "Enough. This has gone too far." "I agree." Mom looked exhausted. "Angelica, please. Karina has nowhere else to go. She still has her apartment until the end of the month. She can't afford to renew the lease," Mom said. "Then she needs to find a place she can afford." Karina pointed toward the van. "We already paid for the rental. That was another bad decision." Her face twisted with anger. "You cold, selfish." "Don't finish that sentence," I said. Something in my voice made her stop. I walked over to the keypad beside the garage and entered the new code Naomi had suggested after the house went on the market. The garage door lifted a few inches before I stopped it. "I changed the locks yesterday," I said. "Your old emergency key doesn't work anymore. The garage code has been changed. The security cameras are recording and the buyer's inspector will be here this afternoon. You all need to leave." Dad stared at me as if I were someone he no longer recognized. "You changed the locks on your own family?" "No," I replied. "I changed the locks on my house." Lily sat quietly in the back seat of Karina's car, her face barely visible through the window. Seeing her calmed me, I lowered my voice. "I'll say this once. Lily will always be welcome in my life. I'll gladly have her over on weekends when it's arranged properly. I'll even help pay her school fees directly if she truly needs something important, but none of you will use her to pressure me into giving up my home." Karina folded her arms. "So you get to play the generous aunt while leaving us out on the street? You're not on the street, you know what I mean." "Yes," I said quietly. "I finally do." Marcus looked increasingly uncomfortable. "Karina told me this arrangement had already been agreed to." "It hadn't." He turned toward her. "You told me your sister offered." Karina narrowed her eyes. "She would have eventually." That single sentence revealed everything. It wasn't a misunderstanding, it wasn't desperation, it was a strategy. Push hard enough, bring Lily into it, get Mom emotional. Let Dad pressure me, show up with moving boxes and create a situation too uncomfortable for me to refuse. It had probably worked before in smaller ways. This time there was a for sale sign in the yard and a signed contract sitting on Naomi's desk. Marcus stepped away from the van. "I'm not getting involved in this," he muttered. Karina turned toward him. "You already are." "No, you told me we were moving into a family property temporarily. You never said you were forcing your sister out of her own bedroom." "It's not like that." He looked at me, embarrassed. "It sounds exactly like that." 10 minutes later, he left in a rideshare. Karina cried. Mom blamed me. Dad said I had humiliated everyone. I stood in the driveway wearing only my socks, shivering in the cold, and watched them drive away with the van still completely full. It was an extreme step. She looked surprised, but it was necessary, I continued, because none of you believed me when I said the house was mine. The only boundary you truly understood was a signed closing date. Mom lowered her eyes to her hands. "We shouldn't have put you in that position." "No," I said. "I know you worry about Karina." "I do, so do I, but worrying about her isn't the same as rescuing her from every consequence." Mom nodded slowly. Dad took a little longer. He didn't apologize directly, that wasn't his style, but a few months later, on my birthday, he sent me a message. "I drove past the old house today. There was a dog in the yard. The new owners seem to be taking good care of the place. I understand why you sold it now, even if I didn't back then." I read the message twice before replying with 2 simple words. "Thank you." It wasn't forgiveness for everything. It wasn't a dramatic reconciliation, but it was a beginning. As for Karina, our relationship changed for good. She stopped asking me for money. The first time Lily needed new glasses, Karina mentioned how expensive they were during a phone call, then quickly added, "I'm not asking for help. I've already budgeted for them." It was a small sentence, but it showed me she had learned something. Maybe not everything, maybe not completely, but enough. Sometimes I think about the room I renovated. I picture the sage green walls, the linen curtains, and Mr. Bennett's granddaughter curled up on the window seat with a book while an old rescue dog sleeps peacefully on the floor. I don't regret spending $18,000 on that room. And I don't regret leaving it behind. That renovation taught me something I should have learned years earlier. Peace is expensive, not just because hardwood floors and custom shelves cost money. Peace is expensive because once people become comfortable benefiting from your silence, protecting yourself will always seem cruel to them. For years, I believed being the dependable daughter meant solving every family emergency. I believed being a good sister meant giving until nothing felt completely mine anymore. I believed loving my niece meant letting her mother use that love as leverage. I was wrong. Stability isn't built by taking someone else's bedroom. Family isn't a free pass to ignore boundaries. And generosity isn't measured by how quietly you allow people to erase you. That Christmas, my family told me I could sleep on the couch in my own house. By sunrise, the house was on the market. 14 days later, I handed over the keys. For the first time in my life, I held on to something far more valuable, the right to decide where I truly belonged.
If you made it all the way to the end, I did love to hear your thoughts. Do you think Angelisa made the right decision, or should she have handled the situation differently? Let me know your opinion in the comments. I read as many of them as I can. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notification bell so you never miss another amazing Reddit story. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.